that sometimes when I do my practice, I stand like a tree and meditate. But when I do my practice, it sometimes feels that my natural state is is the natural state. There's no thinking in the natural state. It's just it's just an emptiness, and that is the natural being. But I
One
think
second, Schumann, just let me ask you a question, but I just need to pin you first so I don't see myself. 1 second. Okay. So when you say the natural state, so there's two different elements to it. There is you can put the personal awareness in itself, and then there is the recognition of consciousness, and that, if you stay there, that is, you could say, an absence of thought, an absence of conceptualization. If you go deeply into it, the world and you disappear, and then there is just perception happening. But then there's this other element to it, there's the love element, and the love element is the beingness, is the I am, is the consciousness. And eventually what happens is those two merge together, and sometimes when you're awakening, you have different elements. You have the recognition of the consciousness, where everything goes very silent and very still, and you could say peaceful, and empty, and there's no thoughts, there's no conceptualization. But it's missing the love side, the feminine side, which is the everything side, and that's the sense of existence, the sense of life, the sense of being, and that feels like love. So when those two meet, there is an experience of bliss or love.
I think what happens, maybe you'd be able to make sense of it better than me, because I have a sense of what you just spoke of, but it's not quite what no, what happens is that it feels like the mind becomes very fast and thought seems very slow and turgid, almost illusory. It feels like it's a trap, and it's like a false perception, and that's not what I am, and that my perception is too fast for thought. It just feels like different. It you know, it just it feels different because it feels like that whatever I think I am, it's not what I am. That's what I mean, and that
Yeah,
it's just a different frequency.
I see. Yeah, I agree. So there's this other thing, I don't know if this is what you're talking about, like it's so hard to talk about experience because it's so different. Imagine if our job was to describe what the taste of watermelon is. Like, it would be so hard, us going backwards and forwards trying to express it to each other. So the other thing that happens is that when you're waking up, and you recognize personal awareness, that's not actually the big consciousness. That's still a fragment of the mind. So what seemingly happens is the mind turns around and recognizes personal consciousness, and personal consciousness is the ability to move the lens. Like, I can put, like, so when you first started talking, I had to just change a setting. So I had my hearing on you listening, and then there was another part of me that was changing a setting in my broadcaster. So my personal awareness split into two. Hang on, sorry, there's somebody that's unmuted themselves. So that the personal awareness. So when you're waking up, you look around at the personal awareness, but the personal awareness is still an abstraction of the mind, but it's deeper than thoughts of I am Schumann, I am, like you're going back. So Nisargadatta Maharaj would call the personal awareness the portal between the person and the big consciousness. So the personal awareness you can see, and you can rest in that, and you can abide in that, And that is still an abstraction of the mind, because there's something beyond that that knows that. But it's like the portal, it's like the slide to the absolute. So in that, when you're doing that exercise, there is moments where you'll touch on the big consciousness. And when you do that, it'll feel like completely losing yourself. Like there will be no controller left. It's like a dying. And there'll be moments when you touch on that. But when that isn't present, doing the activity of putting attention in attention, so putting the consciousness in the consciousness, or putting the personal awareness in the I am, is wisdom. It's not really someone doing it. And what happens is then there is a zooming back out into that big consciousness which is prior to the personal consciousness. I don't know if that's touching on more of what you're talking about.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think you described it accurately. Yeah, I think my question is about really how true I am to myself, because when I'm in that sense, it feels like there's absolutely nothing to fear. But yet, in my practical life, I have fears like anyone else, and I think I mean, how true am I? I have the sense of that there's nothing to fear, and um, that I'm completely unbound, and yet, perhaps I'm not being so authentic, because I do have fears in my ordinary everyday life, and I am attached to things, even though when I'm in that state I feel that there's no attachments to anything, and yet obviously I am attached very much.
Yeah.
but
eventually what you want to come to is not the end of fear, but the end of using fear to make an identity, or fear being connected to an identity. So the body is meant to have fears, and that will depend on your habits and conditions. So I'm trying to think of like so if you walk past a like gang of kids or something on the side of the road, like the body maybe feels fear, and that's maybe a natural fear. Like it's maybe appropriate, like maybe the movement to the other side of the road, or the walking around, or the not engaging, or if they're confrontational to you, not confronting back, is wisdom. So it's not that the fear is the issue, it's when fear becomes an identity. When that fear says something about you, that I'm not a real man because I feel afraid of it, or I'm not enlightened because I feel frightened of it, or I'm not good enough because I feel frightened of it, or if I was really serious about the spiritual path, I wouldn't feel fear. So it's when it's the turning them into an identity that you hold as yourself, that's the illusion. The body is meant to feel fear, otherwise you'd just get gobbled up. You'd be eaten really quickly. Like it's like a very natural phenomena, but what we create as humans, and which we don't need, is the identity, and that's what's called seeking. So then when you have an idea that you shouldn't feel fear if you want to be enlightened, then you will try to avoid that fear and deny that fear rather than really feel the fear. And this is then when you begin to live in an abstraction. So it's like, it's not the emotions or the feelings that are the issues, it's the one that claims it and then makes an identity out of it. Like you are not somebody that's afraid.
I think you're correct, because that is what has happened. But what I've been doing, though, this probably seems a bit strange, is that I've been saying, what is it that I love most? And I've been saying I put what I love most before any of my fears. So that's where my attention goes. So,
Yeah.
love, and I have to be careful of the word love. What do I mean by love? But I'll just say it. So putting love before anything else, before my fears or my demons. So that's what I've been doing.
What do you mean by that? I don't understand.
If for example something has spooked me, so to speak, or there's a bit of a challenge, instead of getting identified with what spooks me or what causes the contraction, just trying to remember that um, there is the bigger picture. I feel, I mean, this is probably just a belief, but and it is a belief, but I don't believe I'm just here to be contracted or a servant to my to my fears. I believe that uh, there's a deeper love, and if to make that more realistic, um, yes, I have to face whatever it is that's coming towards me, but just remember that love is more important
Yeah.
than
I see.
than what
Yeah.
that that thing.
Yeah. And protecting yourself from that thing
Yeah,
is
yeah,
the
yeah.
most important thing there is. And the irony of it is love is authenticity. So love is allowing God to move through you. And if God is writing in fear in that moment, it's like really embracing and accepting the fear. Really, like, it's not about you, the fear. It's not about you've done something wrong or that you're bad or that says something about you. It's that is what God's put into play, and it's like honoring that, honoring God's will, and that's where the love is.
And I get the sense that in that regards that I'm unconditionally free.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really sweet. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like with Khaleesi, it's with a dog or with an animal. It's they're so themselves. They're so unconditionally free. They don't have to buy a place into heaven. So, yeah, it's really beautiful.
thank you. Yeah, absolutely, and unconditionally free.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Suma.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So blissful, like just in that conversation, just really blissful to really be honoring and like this commitment to love, to really being ourselves. It's really beautiful.